I was reading this on PragerU earlier. In Philadelphia's area last night, there was mass looting and rioting. 11 people were shot, including, according to PragerU, a 15-year-old girl. Over 30 businesses were destroyed. Police completely lost control, and the governor called it, Sarah, I'll have you guess. Guess what he called it? He described the protest as
peaceful.
exactly. Woo! And there's been hardly a peep about this, Sarah, from the commentariat on Twitter. Just what the hell is going on? Now, I know I say this every single time, but listen, today's guest is an absolute hoot. She's brave and courageous in sticking up for the Republican Party here in the United Kingdom and believes passionately in the special relationship. So I'm absolutely delighted to have her on the show to discuss why she thinks that the polls have got it all wrong on Trump, what the UK-US relationship would look like under a Biden presidency, big tech's assault on anti-Biden press reporting, and why she's so passionate about the case for Donald J. Trump. Anyway, that's enough from me. Here's Sarah Elliott, the chair of Republicans Overseas UK. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Now, Sarah, can I start by asking you the most difficult question of all, and to briefly sort of set out why you believe, or what you believe rather, the case is for Donald J. Trump?
Well, for me, as somebody who didn't vote for him the first time, and as a conservative before Republican, I care about outcomes, and his outcome has been a stellar conservative record. And when I mean conservative, I mean he has allowed the hardworking Americans to keep more of their hard-earned money. So he has cut taxes and regulation to take the burden of government off their backs, which then spurred a roaring economy, and one of the best on record in the last 50 years since the baby boomers. We had 4% growth in December when economists had been saying for years, how do we get above 2%? Well, let me tell you, you deregulate and you cut taxes. Somehow that incentivizes people to want to create jobs and enter the marketplace. And we also had median income is at the highest at 68,000. It increased over 6% in 1 year. That's a record since 1967. I mean, record low unemployment, 3.5%, record low unemployment for Hispanics and minorities. I mean, you're just saying, like, I think the most important indicator actually is wage growth, which was at 3.4%. And that was for lower income Americans. And the working class, as you know, who elected Donald Trump, did so because, quite frankly, they hadn't seen any economic prosperity over 16 years as the metropolitan elites had increasingly become richer and more affluent. But the working class base, the Democratic Party, had been left behind. They're the forgotten man and woman. And here they started, he fulfilled his campaign promise. He also fulfilled his campaign promises on getting us constitutional judges, which are people in the tradition of Antonin Scalia. And these are people who do not think of, legislate from the bench, but they look at what our founders intended for the Constitution to be. They look just at the intent of the founders to try to adjudicate laws that Congress passes. This is in order to create tyranny, to push back on a large federal government, and to maximize individual freedom, because that's what America is about. He's done that for 3 times, 3 solid judges, the most recent one done on Monday with Amy Coney Barrett. And then he's also filled over 230 lower judge positions with such judges. So that's huge. He's also, look at all the peace agreements he's done recently between Israel and Arab states, historic enemies. And then he's also not done any more military entanglements around the world or interventions that are wasteful and cost human lives, and he hasn't dragged any of our allies into quagmires like previous presidents. It's really refreshing to actually think we're bringing troops home. And those are the people who support the president. They serve in the military, and they get to see their family now after 20 years in Afghanistan, going back and forth. Such a hole for taxpayer money. So I mean, he's also really supported NATO, living over here, and I'm married to a Brit and I have children, and the special relationship is incredibly important to me because we are the defenders of the free world, the UK and the US. And the fact that he's increased NATO funding 130 million in the last year, and then with commitments of over $400 million in future years. So I just think that he's done an excellent job, and he's the guy who is the perfect guy to challenge China. He made it his big campaign issue in 2015. It got him through the primary. And lo and behold, China is a real problem for the West and for free people. And he's the only guy who can actually take him on. Joe Biden, I believe, is compromised, which we can get to. But those are the main reasons that I support President Trump. He ticks my voting issues. That's all I can ask of a president or a politician. If you campaign on your promises, fulfill them. And he did. I thought he was going to lie to us. I thought he was a New York liberal. He might still be a New York liberal, but he's not governing as one. And so I'm happy.
I mean, a lot of conservative commentators have said that, haven't they? Which is just the shock at how, one, Trump has delivered on many of his major campaign pledges, and two, just how conservative his style of, being in the top job actually has been.
Yeah, I mean, I actually see him just being pro-American. And I see the Republican Party now, because the left has gone so far left, that the Republican Party is just the party for patriots, the party for people who love America the way it was intended to be founded. Because the people on the other side are very angry, and they have a lot of hate towards our history, towards our accomplishments, towards who we are as a society, and towards our U.S. Constitution, quite frankly. And he sees himself as leading the charge of the Second American Revolution. He sees himself as a George Washington, a legendary president that's going to usher in another American century for the United States when everybody wrote us off. And he's the comeback kid. I mean, if there's anyone who knows how to come back from losing, it's Donald Trump. I mean, he's been bankrupt multiple times in his life. It doesn't scare him. He gets right back in the fight. And there's this great meme that goes around that I think just encapsulates it for conservatives and the American people, that it's his face, and it says, "They're not after me, they're after you, but I'm in the way." And so he's become this cultural icon in the fighting ring, being our defender. And you know what? He takes on the media, and the media have been horrible to him. And I think that's another reason why people also come to his side.
I mean, Sarah, you are in a unique position, really, because you have followed quite closely the Brexit vote in this country. And, of course, you're very in touch with what's happening in the United States of America with the Trump presidency and the shock vote for Trump. That was never supposed to happen, much like our vote for Brexit. Now, since those two votes, both of them in 2016, there were, and have been, continue to be, establishment attempts to overturn what were the democratic votes of the working men and women of the United Kingdom and the United States of America. There have been attempts to smear the vote as, Russian interference, dodgy money, you name it. The media have tried their damnedest to actually overturn these votes. And time again, Sarah, the Russian interference charges have been seen to be complete conspiracy theories without any grounding whatsoever in both the United Kingdom and the US. I just wonder if you could reflect for a moment on what you think the parallels are Are there similarities between the establishment attempt to attack our vote for Brexit and to bring down President Trump?
I mean, you articulated it so well. They're very similar. In fact, I would say it's pretty much the same concepts. It's these metropolitan elites who, by the way, have taken over the Labour Party here and the U.S. Democratic Party. And they they dislike the nation state. They dislike patriots. They're into the multiculturalism and identity politics. And they basically want to call the shots, but on the backs of the working people. And so how do they do that? But to basically denigrate them is to call them racist, to ignore them, to ignore the democratic outcomes, to forget to call them deplorables, to call them swivel-dyed loons, to completely disregard them. Because they have a mission that's more about global dominance, that's looking outward, not inward into the country. It's about making them wealthy. It's about making them better connected. It's about giving them more power. So it's about ignoring everyday British people who are just trying to put food on the table and get a good education for their kids. And it's about focusing on how can we enrich ourselves. And it's truly the haves and the have-nots. And Donald Trump came in, someone who could not be bought off by the trade associations and the lobbying community in Washington because he's self-made. He has nothing to lose. In fact, it's more of a sacrifice for him and his brand to come into American politics. He's been ridiculed, made fun of, assassination attempts, people burn effigies of him. I've never seen a politician take so much heat and hate before. And these are all people who say, let love trump hate. Well, they have now embraced hate.
I think a lot of people listening to your words right now will be like, listen, Sarah, I'm totally with you. But then they'll look at the polling and they'll think, well, why are Americans not supporting Trump in large numbers? And is it just because America is just completely exhausted, Sarah, with the last 4 years of what's been insanity and of course, Trump's tweeting as well? Doesn't the polling show that the States just wants a return to normalcy under President Biden, perhaps?
Well, I hate to break it to everybody, and I hate to break this to Americans too. There's no going back to normal. Okay, we're in a culture war that has now boiled over thanks to a lot of the pressure of the pandemic. But it is for Americans and the British who don't really see things through the culture war lens or through culture lenses. Donald Trump is very hard to understand. And many Americans are tired. I would say even Trump supporters are tired, but they know that the fight is worth fighting, and they know that it's worth pursuing and having another term of Donald Trump, because otherwise justice won't be done. I can go into the Democratic Party agenda later, but what I just have to say is Joe Biden is not the answer to normalcy. He's a compromised politician with ties to the CCP, which have just come out in the last couple of weeks, and particularly confirmed for me by an interview yesterday of one of his business partners. And I don't see an American politician that can do what Donald Trump does and be normal. So Donald Trump is the fighter, but what you also get with Donald Trump is the tweeting and the bombasticness. And I actually think that if the media was doing their job, it wouldn't be in our face all the time.
I mean, if we look at, I was reading this on PragerU earlier, in Philadelphia's area last night, there was mass looting and rioting. 11 people were shot, including, according to PragerU, a 15-year-old girl. Over 30 businesses were destroyed. Police completely lost control and the governor called it, Sarah. I'll have you guess. Guess what he called it. He described the protest as
Peaceful.
exactly. Woo! And there's been hardly a peep about this, Sarah, from the commentariat on Twitter. Just
I
what the
know.
hell is going on? And this is this a sign of things to come under Biden?
Oh, oh yeah. I mean, well, first off, it was started under Obama. I mean, he was never truly challenged by the press. And it'll just keep going. I think it'll be worse. It'll be way worse under a Biden administration. I mean, this is just what boggles my mind. And I do a lot of media here, and everyone's going, "Oh, the president is, when he walked to the church holding the Bible, and he says, oh, he's a white supremacist." And I'm like, really? How about? Can we talk about Antifa that's burning down our cities? We had 75 cities on fire this summer. We still have Portland being occupied. We had Chas in Seattle. I mean, it's been horrible. And they're mostly minority communities that are being destroyed. And they're not done in the name of racial justice. This is a political movement. And they don't want to talk about it. And the media doesn't want to say it because guess what? They're in on it. They're in on it with the globalists. They're all part of this. They want to see Donald Trump lose. They don't care about the Brexit voter. They don't care about the person who proudly served Great Britain or the United States. They're just kind of ignorant fools. They care more about making money and gaining power and hoarding it. And I think it's atrocious that what the media has done, especially, with last night and the New York Post story. Should we go into the New York Post story? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. And so this was basically censorship.
Censorship. It's total censorship because they're in the tank for Biden. I mean, this is a guy who cannot form a sentence together. He just said that the Democrats have formed the best organization of voter fraud. He said that on video. He said he was running against George W. and then he stopped himself. This is a guy who said that 200 million people have died from COVID. I mean, the guy needs to retire peacefully and gracefully. He's not going to.
Doesn't that tell us, though, why, when it comes to the vice president position, if Biden was to win the presidency, the vice president, Kamala Harris, is going to be the most powerful vice president in the history of the Republic, surely? Because, let's be honest, Sarah, Biden ain't up to it.
No, you're totally right. He's Sleepy Joe, and Kamala Harris is the most left-wing U.S. senator in the Senate, other than Bernie Sanders. And she wants Medicare for all, which would be universal health care in the United States, which, I know we have it with the NHS here, but it's a completely different ball of wax for the United States. That's a different ball game. She believes in open borders. She believes in, free health care for illegal immigrants. She believes in sanctuary cities, which means if you're an illegal immigrant, you get legal protection in these cities and you don't get deported back, no matter if you've murdered someone or raped someone or assaulted, committed a crime. She, believes in the Green New Deal, which would cost $2 trillion and completely halt our economy, to stop the oil industry, go to fossil fuels. I mean, it is a socialized agenda. It's socialism. And the Democrats are actually having an identity crisis. And you wouldn't know that because you think, oh, everybody's behind Biden. But the fact that Joe Biden is the best they can do to combat Donald Trump after 3 years, and clearly the radical left has great influence in the party because, Bernie Sanders was doing better than Biden until South Carolina. And then everybody got told to fall in line before Super Tuesday. So you had Buttigieg and Klobuchar and Yang, although Yang wasn't going very far, but they all dropped out so that they could get behind Biden to stop Bernie Sanders from being the nominee. And what's so funny is that they're so confident about this nominee that they're actually keeping him in his house for the remainder of the campaign, that he's not doing campaign events. Because quite frankly, there's an enthusiasm gap between the president and the former vice president.
Well, exactly. Do you think that's going to really hurt him actually in the long? Because if you consider, and I've seen it, the videos of Trump coming down in his helicopter,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just tons of people, and then
yeah,
Biden's rallies, he comes down a staircase, and they're all in sort of bubbles. And I mean in bubbles. There's circles on the floor, and people are sat in these things. And they're
yeah.
sort of, it's very...
Oh,
And you're
yeah.
just sort of like... It looks like they've sort of let people out of a retirement home.
I mean, it looks like the Twilight Zone. It's like, what world are we in where that's a campaign rally? And it's mostly press, who, by the way, just care what his flavor of ice cream is. They don't actually care about asking him what he knows about his son's business dealings and who the big guy is and the Hunter Biden emails who wants 10% of the gig. I mean, it's insane. I feel like this is why it's the fight for the nation's soul right now, because we don't have freedom of the press. We
And
have
if this was
censorship
Trump, they'd be all over it.
all over it. Look at what they did to his taxes. They illegally, okay, what the New York Times did with Trump's taxes was actually illegal. They illegally obtained them because no one gave them permission, and then they published them. And they also published them with an agenda. We're not giving the full picture of his tax affairs. And but that was all the headline news, and that's what I was constantly asked about in this country. But nobody's talking about Antifa or what Black Lives Matter really is, or about the fact that Joe Biden's literally hiding in his basement with a mask on. Like, how is that an inspirational presidential campaign? This is why I think Trump has the edge, and why I think Trump will win, because Americans like to vote for somebody, not against somebody, okay? And they're voting against Trump for an old man to be a peaceful placeholder. Well, he's going to be a rubber stamp for Kamala Harris and for AOC +3, as Donald J. Trump likes to call them. And he's just going to disappear. We're never going to see
AOC, just for our audience, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, she is so far to the left, Sarah. So far to the left.
I mean, she's a socialist from New York City. Like, and what else do they want to do? They want to pack the Supreme Court, which means because Trump has been successful putting actually pro-U.S. Constitution judges on the court, people who believe in government restraint, they want to add people to the Supreme Court.
And that really gets me mind, because you can imagine if the shoe was on the other foot and actually Biden was president right now, or Hillary was president right now, and Hillary was fighting a second term, and Trump had said, listen, if we win, we're going to stack the court. We're going to stack the court because the Liberals have been able to get their guys onto it. There would be cries of fascism, Sarah. There would be cries of the death of democracy.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. It would be, I mean, that is fascism, actually, if you ask me. I mean,
it's certainly not democratic.
It's not democratic. And this is why the Democrats want to end the Electoral College, which is designed to protect equal rights to people all across the country.
From the tyranny of the majority.
Yes. And because they cannot win the Electoral College, because they actually have to pander to the deplorables and the swivel-eyed loons in the middle of the country, which they hate doing, right? They go, well, we need to do popular vote, so that one person, one vote. So then they just have to worry about their metropolitan cities, which they'll have total control over, do have total control over. And then again, it's the tyranny of the majority, and the coast can then tell the interior of the country what to do.
Why then do you think, given everything you've just said, I imagine much of the audience watching this will be thinking, well, bloody hell, I'm completely with this Sarah lass. She's got this so right. This Trump bloke, he must win. This is mental. But then they'll look at the polls and they'll think, oh, shit, this looks terrible for Trump. And in the UK, the polls got it pretty spot on, really. with the Conservative majority. Not quite as big as it actually was in the end, but you know, they said there'd be a Conservative majority. Why do you think then that the polls in the US are getting it so wrong?
Well, I mean, we'll know for sure if they got it wrong on Tuesday or Wednesday and Thursday of next week. But I think the polls were right last time on the popular vote. They were off by a couple of points on the popular vote. So I think they may get the popular vote right. But I think there's a huge shy Trump effect going on right now because of the social desirability bias. People they're afraid of the cancel culture. They're afraid of losing their jobs and their livelihoods. Is a very real threat. You know, if you tweet something wrong or if you come out as a teacher in favor of Trump, you could lose your job, you could lose your business, you could be all of a sudden put under the microscope for the law to come after you for something dumb or stupid. And that's why I think Trump has it.
If we look closer into the polling, a lot of it reveals that actually a lot of these swing states that everyone's going to be watching next week are really within the margin of error. Is that right?
That's right. I wouldn't be looking at national polling at the moment, which has Biden up like 8 points overall. You know, these elections are decided in battleground states because each state has a certain number of electoral college points, and he needs to get to 270 to win. And so, again, I think it's a toss-up between in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida. I feel pretty confident that the president has Florida and North Carolina and Ohio. I'm not confident about Arizona. I'm not, and he could possibly take Minnesota for the first time. The mayors of northern Minnesota in the mining region have endorsed him as president. That's so their labor union territory, and now he has their support. Will that rural vote be able to counterbalance the urban areas? That's the big question. And the suburban areas outside of St. Paul and Minneapolis. And that's really the $1 million question right now is, can Trump's strategy of doubling down on his base and expanding the working class vote and now with minorities as well, I should say he's doing much better with minorities than he did last time, that will they counteract the white woman suburban mom and the educated folks in the cities and the surrounding areas? You know, Macomb County is in Michigan is one to really watch. That went for Obama twice and went for Trump last time. That'll be a really good determiner. There are a couple other counties I can quickly mention to you. Let me find my notes here. But Robeson County, North Carolina, Howard County, Iowa, like I said, Macomb County, Michigan, and Vigo County, Indiana. And these are all counties that went for Obama twice and then went for Trump last time. So, keep your eyes on that, and that'll basically tell you the tea leaves for the rest of the night.
Does that mean that, British people shouldn't stay up all night because we might not actually know the outcome?
We might not actually know the outcome. Fortunately, the states that are really in play are in Central Time Zone and East Coast, so they'll come sooner. 1 a.m., we'll start to see exit polls. By 2 a.m., we'll get a better idea. By 4 a.m., 5 a.m., I think we should know what direction the night is going. So if you want to go to bed at 5 a.m., you'll have a good idea. But again, exit polls are at 1 a.m. And so, just wait until then and then decide whether you want to stay up the rest of the night. I will be up.
I think I'm going to have to be up as well. I'll be like this. But listen, It was the New York Post, wasn't it, that ran the Hunter Biden story? And to sort of sum it up for our British audience. Right now, actually, I think there is a hearing with with Ted Cruz, uh, and that he has in front of him right now Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, and Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. And he's quizzing them on censorship, essentially. Now, this is one area, Sarah, where I think actually Trump is probably leading the world for those on the conservative right in the fight, really, against censorship and a clampdown on debate and speech. You can have as much debate and speech as you want on these platforms, Sarah, as long as you're not conservative. And we saw that with that New York Post story on Hunter Biden. I think the New York Post actually can't access its Twitter account.
That's correct.
That's extraordinary. This is censorship. Do you think Trump, one, has got this right on big tech? And two, what would you like to see moving forward when it comes to free and open speech and debate on these platforms?
I mean, yes, the New York Post still has its Twitter account frozen, and which is just terrible, because you should have rights to your own speech there, and your own profile. These companies are so big and powerful now that it is now an infringement on free speech. It's not just a business's prerogative whether they check something for validity or not. And they have been treated by the Federal Communications Commission in the US as open platforms, meaning that they're not responsible for the content on their platform. So you can have this freedom of discourse, and people can say ridiculous things and very mean things, and nobody gets sued. And neither do the companies that air it, like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. But now they have gotten into the business of being like a publisher, of being like a newspaper where they fact check people like the President of the United States, like conservatives, or they shadow ban them, or they take away followers when they don't like the messages that are coming out from these accounts. And so that is a form of censorship. And that is what I see would change in a second Trump term, that I think they would then be held accountable for the content on their platforms, which would make them a regulated entity. They would become like a public utility. There'd probably be taxes involved, or some form of payment from the users, I would imagine. But there needs to be more competition to these big tech companies so that freedom of expression is not censored. But you have places like Parler, which is a conservative type Twitter social media platform, which is great and all, but it only caters to Twitter. So then you're not able to evangelize or to talk to people with different viewpoints. Then you're just isolating with people of the same views, and that doesn't help society, and that doesn't help freedom of speech and challenging ideas. So I think there just needs to be competition to these guys, and maybe they should be regulated.
Now, I want to turn on to sort of the more personal elements of supporting Trump. For you, I mean. I want to know, and listen, when we won the Brexit referendum, a very good friend of mine, who I'd known for over a decade since I was at school, and she said, "I'm sorry I've not been in touch." And I said, "Yeah, I was really worried something had happened to you. I've not heard from you in days." And she said, "I just haven't been able to bring myself to speak to you since Leave won the referendum." And that friendship has died a certain death. Now, I also get rape threats online, or if they're not threats, people saying, "I hope you get raped in prison." When I went through the Electoral Commission saga, the recent Metropolitan Police investigation, similar things. I want to know, Sarah, what it's been like for you as a vocal Trump supporter, public Trump supporter, what it's been like as far as the abuse that has been directed at you. And if you think that is unique to Trump and Brexit supporters.
Well, fortunately, I haven't had the abuse you've received, and I'm so sorry that you have to go through this. I mean, it's terrible, and it's horrible that as human beings, this is how we talk to one another. I fortunately, I haven't had that. I get conspiracy theories that I'm actually a Russian plant, and I'm also a plant by Trump, and I'm trying to manipulate Boris and Number 10 and pull all sorts of puppeteer strings. So I actually find it slightly entertaining because I'm basically a stay-at-home mom who has two young children, and I sit in my little Zoom command station that I'm here and try to help Republicans overseas in a volunteer capacity. But people attribute way too much power to me, and I probably shouldn't blow my cover, but I'm not. But so I would say socially, people just don't bring it up with me. I think a lot of people are disappointed in me. Some people don't, they kind of know it comes with the territory because this is my livelihood and has been, and my husband's livelihood. So I think they respect us on one hand, but I'm also treated like a circus animal with a couple of different heads. And, oh, let's bring her to the dinner party and push her buttons and see what kind of crazy Trumpian things she'll say. But the thing is, I wasn't on the Trump train until recently. And I've been pretty much a down the line conservative Republican my whole life. I just see how much the left is untrustworthy and anti-American in nature and don't want to see them near the levels of power. And I became a huge Trump supporter, not just because the tax cuts worked and proved my economic policies right again, but because of Brett Kavanaugh and the way that the Democrats personally went after him with unsubstantiated claims of gang rape. Like, this is a stellar, upstanding man, but they did it because he's a white, male, conservative, father of two, Catholic, you know? They wanted, he has to be the enemy because everything is seen through critical race theory. And it was horrible. It was discrimination. And they went through his yearbook, reading passages of what people had written to him at age 18. It was embarrassing as an American to watch the U.S. senators behave in such a way. And so a qualified judge who deserved to be on the Supreme Court. So yeah, for me personally, it hasn't been like your experience, but I definitely don't bring it up in the school run. But I don't tell people what I do.
Yeah. I mean, as you've just mentioned there, though, with the Kavanaugh story, that it was a horrible period, wasn't it? I wonder, as a Catholic, are you sort of worried that political discourse is actually getting to a point where America is almost at risk of civil war? Yeah.
I think we are in a civil war. I am a Catholic. I want to be able to raise my children without being discriminated against. I want to be able to go to Mass, and I want to be able to talk about my religion outside of my church, not just inside my church, because that's not freedom of religion if I have to just keep it inside my house or inside the church. I want to be able to pray whenever I feel like without feeling like I have to hide it. That's freedom. And that's not what the left is offering. And you see that with Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation, especially at the district court 3 years ago, when it was Kamala Harris and Dianne Feinstein that were questioning her about her religion and saying, your dogma, your faith lives loudly through you. Well, what does that mean, Dianne? Does that mean I'm too Catholic for you? I didn't know that was actually a measurement or an obstacle I had to overcome. I think Amy should take it as a compliment that if she's living her life as her faith dictates, she's probably doing something right. It's just really disappointing to me the direction our country is going. And this is why I say you can remove Trump out of office, but people's rights will still be in jeopardy.
I mean, if we move on to thinking about what this election means for the United Kingdom, could you just reflect on what you think the UK-US relationship, or the special relationship, would look like under a Biden presidency? I mean, he really got my back up recently when he tweeted about the Good Friday Agreement, the Belfast Agreement.
Yeah.
And he clearly, I mean, a lot of these American politicians that wax lyrical about the Belfast Agreement clearly haven't read it, because they keep suggesting that the US is a co-signatory to it, which isn't the case. And you sort of start to get into territory where it is like that culture war battle where Brexit has become a proxy for Trump, and the Democrats and the left hate it and are siding with the EU and shunning the UK. Am I getting this right, or am I being really paranoid?
No, you're not being paranoid. And I think we're all feeling a bit paranoid because the media would tell us one thing when we're seeing the facts, which are a different thing, and that's called gaslighting, which is happening. No, Biden is, and the Democratic wing of the party has always been very close to the Irish delegation. They've always been heavily influenced by the Irish lobby in the country. And of course, Biden is Irish himself. And I think they're pro big bureaucratic multinational organizations. I mean, they love things like the Paris Climate Accord agreements. They love the EU and the idea that you can pick up the phone and go and hit all these countries with one phone call. They just love bureaucracy, right? Because they're globalists and they can hoard all this power and money. And so I think the UK, being that Biden's not a Brexit supporter like Trump, he's going to prioritize the EU as a trading bloc, and a free trade agreement would begin and make priority with the EU rather than Brexit. Whereas Trump really wants to prioritize the UK because he believes in Brexit. He wants a strong United Kingdom to be an ally to face foes like China. And so he wants to see a strong Anglo-American partnership. Joe Biden wants to, again, work with big bureaucratic, politically correct, globalist organizations, and ones that side with the Republic of Ireland in particular. And it must be remembered that he helped secure Gerry Adams, when he was still part of the paramilitary group, a visa to the United States. So, this is where his sympathies lie. And there's just no other way around it. And I think the UK is going to feel a little bit left out, a little chilly in a Biden administration as you are exiting the EU. And what I would just recommend is that the UK, number 10, needs to prioritize a US free trade agreement right now. And I don't think they are.
Yeah, definitely. Now, to end, Sarah, you're clearly passionate about a Republican win. Could you just spell out for us why it is that you're so worried, not just for the United States of America, but for the free world, if the more radical elements of the American left, Kamala Harris and all of the rest of it, AOC, actually managed by proxy to get into power through Joe Biden? What will it be that, we've seen throughout 2020 with the rioting, the looting, you name it, critical race theory, all of these things that have been a phenomenon of 2020 and really come to the fore in 2020. What will we see for the free world and the sort of values been championed on steroids almost if Biden wins?
Well, you're going to see a press that will not keep it accountable. So you will see they will be able to get away with murder, hopefully not literally, but you will see an end to economic prosperity because they will rescind all the Trump tax cuts. They'll start to re-regulate the economy again. So we will not see the income and wage increase and unemployment rates that we had before. You will also start to see critical race theory being, again, reinforced in the government and in our education system. Projects like the 1619 Project, which is critical race theory's history of the United States, that will probably become forced in our state public schools. And you will see efforts to make Medicare for all. Medicare is the health insurance for the elderly in our country, 65 up, and it's for post-retirees. And you will start to see it trying to be implemented nationally, which will really disrupt our insurance industry and our private healthcare system, which gives incredible healthcare. But anyway, that will be an issue. You'll start to see people trying to end the Electoral College and create a constitutional amendment. You'll see trying to get statehood for Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico and Guam so that they can add more liberal senators in the U.S. Senate. And you'll see also what they call packing the Supreme Court, which is expanding the Supreme Court in order to get more liberals on there to balance out the conservative judges. And you'll see defund the police. I mean, you're going to see these measures being pushed at the local level and encouraged. The Democrats stand for, Kamala Harris in particular, late-term abortions, 38 weeks. My children were all born before 38 weeks. It disgusts me. And it's infanticide. There's no other word for it. And then there's states like New York and Virginia, who, by the way, if you have a baby, or I'm sorry, if your child survives an abortion, that child is allowed to then be laid aside and die. I know that sounds incredibly cruel and disgusting, but this is law in places like Virginia and New York State. And so you'll see more take-up of that. You may see legalized marijuana or drug use, but anyways, you're going to see a cultural Marxist left into American society, even more so than now, and a what I would say, accountable media, or a media that's very friendly with this administration, not keep them accountable of their behavior, and forget about seeing justice for the Obama Spygate into the Trump campaign and Michael Flynn and all of that. And also you have Joe Biden, who, based on these emails, has taken Chinese money from Chinese communist officials personally. And so he will be completely compromised when dealing with China, and he will not be able to be tough. So I see a very grim future, and I'm sorry to depress everybody, but the good thing is, in 2 years, we have the congressional elections, and hopefully the Republicans can bring in some accountability, and hopefully the Democrats won't get the Senate. So we have lots to be, hopeful about, but I also see the Democrats just having a ton of infighting, and it's going to be much more difficult for them to govern than they think, and we'll be in the opposition, and opposition is always easier than actually governing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, on that cheery note, we'll call it a night. But thank you so much, Sarah. And I think it's safe to say we live in interesting times. Bloody hell.
Yeah. So basically, for your viewers, the Second American Revolution is on Tuesday, November 3rd. So stay tuned.
Yeah, definitely. Sarah, if people want to find out more from you, where can they find you on Twitter? I know it's on the screen, but yeah, there. Yeah, at Sarah B. Smith, VA.
Exactly. And you can get Republicans Overseas at UK GOP, and we're at republicansoverseasuk.com. And we welcome British members as well as American Republican members. So, yeah. Thank you for having me on,
No,
Darren.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, and let's catch up next week and see what happens.
Yeah, I have money on Trump, by the way.
Oh, well, there we are. There we are. A ringing endorsement. Putting your money where your mouth is.
That's right. That's right.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Sarah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.